because, in 2019, COVID and Putin invading Ukraine were not exactly being debated at election time. They were events that came out of nowhere. They were like almost asteroid events. Certainly some people from afar would have been warning and fearing that Russia would have been up to more sort of military adventurism. But then, they clearly were disbelieved, and now we're reaping the whirlwind, as it were. So in the meantime, the Boris Johnson government very much were being knocked about by all these events. Granted, as Prime Minister, he then presided over an administration which had all sorts of inquiries about how they handled COVID, and there were challenges about the trust he would hold among his colleagues, which is why there was almost an unprecedented number of ministerial resignations in a bid to try and force his hand. So, admittedly, yes, there was the shock event, but then there's how he responded to it and the administration's response to that, which then precipitated, of course, leadership elections, and obviously Liz Truss coming in, and Rishi Sunak.
Sorry, I'm showing flashing imagery on the screen as well, just in case I need to warn you about that. Sorry.
No worries, absolutely. And so it's been obviously a roller coaster. Granted, we remember very well that back then people thought he was, king of all these surveyed, an 80-seat majority. He could be, premier for a decade. And now it seems we're going to fit many more premiers, in elections and uncertainty to come.
In summary, though, do you think he was a good Prime Minister for this country?
I think he was a very consequential and monumental Prime Minister who'll be remembered for delivering things.
That's not a yes or a no, is it? Was he a good...
He'll be talked about for decades to come. He delivered Brexit, which was one of the strongest democratic mandates the British people had given the government. And he smashed through the blockades that prevailed in his way. He got the vaccine rollout delivered. It was the fastest in Europe.
So you think he was a good Prime Minister then?
He has many things he can be proud of, absolutely.
Well, there you go. I got there in the end, everyone. Emma, good Prime Minister Boris Johnson?
No, he was a terrible Prime Minister. He's a very, very good campaigner. He absolutely smashed the Labour Party to bits at the election. But and I think I've used this metaphor with you before, he's like the dog that caught the car. He didn't know what to do with it when he got there. He wanted to then continue governing as a campaigner. And actually, he was stuck with two things. First of all, there were unprecedented crises, and that was a huge issue. But the problem is we also were not robust enough as a state to be able to cope with those crises. Other countries, everyone has had to deal with this, and they haven't gone through three prime ministers in as many times.
No, but they've all ended up in a very similar sorry mess,
Other people are in more or less of a mess. We are considerably at the bottom of the pile in terms of that, and certainly in terms of our politics.